So Juliette, we have learned that the shooter was very close to the spot on a roof where where former President Trump was speaking. How did it happen that this
Yeah.
roof was unsecured?
Well, that's a good question. Look, President Biden has promised an outside or independent review. The Secret Service simply can't review itself. So there's a lot of different questions, but the basic one is sort of why was the line of sight for the assassin so unsecured, knowing what we knew before the rally on Saturday, that there was a accessible building relatively close. You don't have to be a sophisticated shooter to where the protectee stood. And so that's my basic question. People have heard a lot of terms. They've heard from me and others about, security perimeters and how you secure an event or a site like this. Security perimeters are really about crowd control. They really are about sort of who gets close and then what kind of reviews do you want of them. And sometimes they're simple, like, an arms check. Sometimes they're more extensive. You'd have to give your name before whatever. That does not mean that what's outside the security perimeter is somehow safe. It's still a vulnerability for the protectee. And that's the big question. I think the second, and sort of related to that, as I think about it more over the last 36 hours, is the Secret Service had a understanding that there was, a sniper threat, because they had counter snipers ready to take the shot, which they did. And that strikes me as odd, that you would know about the vulnerability, but you would do nothing to either secure the building or put various of your own snipers on those buildings.
Well, you know what stunned me too, just going back to the reporting since then, that there was this Thomas Crooks fellow
Yeah.
showed up outside the metal detector. We presume maybe trying to get into the event, but then he realized it was a metal detector and he had a long gun. He wasn't going to go, but people thought he was acting suspiciously.
Yeah.
We don't know if there was any kind of relaying of those suspicions from the people who thought he was acting suspiciously to anybody else. And James Pindle, whom we're going to talk to in a few minutes, talked about noticing movement on that roof where
Yeah.
the shooter was 25 minutes before
Before.
the speech began,
It's
and seeing the Secret Service with their guns pointed in that direction, their binoculars pointed in that direction. So again, you wonder about the communications.
Yeah. And are there drones that could have determined whether there was movement on top of it? Are there, why doesn't anyone approach him when the moments of suspicion begin? And it wasn't just one person. I mean, all of these are first accounts, but several members of local and state law enforcement, as well as people who were at the rally to support Trump. So it really is. It is, what word do you want to put in here? Like incomprehensible, unconscionable, gross negligence. It is hard to defend the planning, what happened in real time, the communications, the situational awareness. And then and then I have a question about the Secret Service's response time. I mean, when you have a protectee, I mean, we all get trained on this. When they have a protectee, the protectee's desires do not matter. Because the protectee isn't Donald Trump. The protectee is a person who holds a constitutional order, right? Either a former president or future president or Speaker of the House or Senate Majority Leader. I mean, those names change over the decades, but the constitutional order doesn't. And so the protectee isn't really a person, Donald Trump. It's the constitutional person. And he had an awful lot of time to do things. And I don't like that. I mean, I don't care what he did, raise his fist, say fight, 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 whatever. That will come out later. But that would seem like a lot of time.
Can we get back to what Margery was broaching a minute ago? I don't know if either of you mentioned this. My apologies. In addition to all the warnings that apparently were ignored, is I heard a report last night on your station on CNN about how a local sheriff
Climbed up
onto
Yeah.
the roof and saw a guy there with a weapon the shooter apparently.
Yeah.
And
The shooter pointed the weapon at the
Yeah.
officer.
and so he
Yeah.
goes back down, and the issue is, did he convey that
That
to the
message,
Secret
yeah.
Service? Did he not? And also, how did this 20, was he 20? How old is
20 years old.
how
How
did
does he
this
get up there?
20-year-old guy, no, how did he know that
Exactly.
was the one building that was unsecured in this
Yeah.
And he didn't didn't live in this hometown unless he came in and scoped it out before.
You
But we
know,
know he didn't buy the ammunition until the afternoon of the rally. So it doesn't seem
Yeah.
like this was something that was planned out for weeks in advance.
yeah, the
means
thing
that
that
he-
was, go ahead, go ahead, Juliette.
No. It just means that the vulnerabilities were so easy that he was able to take advantage of them in real time. I mean, because, obviously he wasn't staking it out. He doesn't know that the building won't be accessible. And he's there for a long time. I mean, that's the other thing, with lots of people worried about him.
And
No one
seeing him.
approaches him.
Yeah.
No one says anything.
Well, the
Like,
sheriff
no one...
approached him apparently, but
Right.
What happened after that? There's one other thing. I made a big mistake and was watching the press conference yesterday afternoon with all the law enforcement people.
Did you see me
This
on
is like
after?
I did. And this is like the gang who couldn't shoot
Yeah.
straight. Here is the Secret Service security coordinator for the Republican National Convention, speaking to reporters at that press conference, explaining why the security plan has not been changed following the assassination attempt. Here's part of what she had to say.
There have been no changes to our current operational security plans.
It's just...
And this event is designated as a national special security event. So it is an 18-month process that involves all levels of government that are contributing to the operational security plans for this event.
And there's another question about, well, you're contemplating expanding perimeters in the future. No, we're fine. And the reporter follows up because she says, she doesn't quite say, why should we, but something like that. And the reporter says, well, why you should is because they almost executed the former president of the United States. There was such quiet,
Oh my God.
a denial of what had happened.
It was so weird.
I don't expect them to say, here's how we're going to change our protocols. That's not our business. But the notion that allegedly nothing is going to change, how'd that ring with you?
Oh my God. I was on CNN after, and I have it on my Twitter account. Anyone who follows, I literally roll my eyes. I'm caught on air rolling my eyes. What was that about? I mean, this is where, the Secret Service director has finally come out this morning, and the review and all that stuff. Everyone is at that press conference because the president was, except for because the president, former president, has almost been killed. What did she think the questions were going to be? And then her answers are, are about sort of, well, we've been planning this for 18 months or whatever. Look, situations change. The whole point of an NSSE, which is a National Secret Service Special security event, which is, the inauguration, the conventions, is that you adapt to the changing threat environment. You're not static. The whole point of it is this is such a big deal that if there's, a cyber attack or something changes or there's a pandemic, you're able to respond. And that just showed, I mean, you don't know if you should feel bad for her, but it's like, come on, at some stage you're looking at what the answers are and you're like, I cannot go out there with these answers, that we are not changing our positioning in any way whatsoever.
Juliette, something you said on CNN yesterday, I learned that Wisconsin is an open carry state. You can't bring weapons into the convention, but you can beyond the perimeter, to use the term of art. Now, you urged the governor there, Evers, to declare some sort of emergency, which would allow some scaling back of the right to carry nearby. And this morning I read an article in the Milwaukee Sentinel something or other, the local paper, saying that he actually wants to do that, but in all likelihood will not be able to. I don't understand why he won't be able to. Isn't that something he unilaterally could do?
Of course. He's governor. He has public safety powers. Some of them will be emergency powers. He can't do them for so long. Someone may sue him. But if I'm him, you assert it, which is essentially that for public safety, exceptional public safety reasons, you are extending the security perimeter of what is the protected space of the convention to some period outside of it. And I mean, I don't get, and it was clear to me in that press conference that the police chief and the mayor would gladly accept that because they basically said our hands are tied and
The
we're
mayor
just
said he
gonna,
wanted to do it, but he
Yeah.
was bound by
yeah,
state law.
it's just crazy. I mean, it is. And I know people are like, well, you know, if, why should the members, the attendees of the Republican National Convention, you know, be more protected than the average person who lives in Milwaukee? And the answer is because the former president of the United States was almost assassinated. I mean, that's the only answer that's legitimate.
You know, Juliette, I know you work not just in the United States, but outside the
Yeah.
United States doing security. You've just been over at the Olympics that are coming up
They're
in
going, yeah.
Paris. You know, we've been hearing, you know, there's no place for violence in the United States of America and calls for unity and stuff. And my goodness, it's kind of like this when we say this isn't who America is, when this is who
Exactly
America
who it
is.
is.
Yeah.
And we are very violent. I wonder what your sense is from
Yeah.
international
is-
security relationships,
Yeah.
what
It
people
is a
think of us.
national security issue. I mean, it's about our capacity to portray our democracy as functioning. And that is a perception that the world often had. I don't think they have it now about the United States. Look, we had a message to deliver after World War II, which that message won, right? Which was, you know, you can have a free market economy with individual protections for and freedoms for people. And a liberal democratic government that had transitions of power without violence. And that's what NATO is about. That is what, I mean, and that's exportable and worthy of defense. I mean, that's a hard message to sell now. And that's what I wrote. I've written 2 pieces for The Atlantic in the last 36 hours. And the first one was really like, I could talk your ear off, as I have, about security perimeters, right? I could do that forever. You should have this, you shouldn't have that. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
This is about our democracy.
You know, Juliette, last question. I don't know if you said it, but appropriately, I guess. People do what you do for a living, people in law enforcement, security, that sort of thing, talk about worrying about copycats after the fact. Is that obviously one has to plan for the worst case scenario? Is that often happen, or are these generally one and dones for at least?
Well, I mean, I think one of the good things, if I could look for silver lining, is because the assassin's political agenda is unknown, unknowable, not even clear that that's what's animating it. His father is one thing, he's possibly one, I mean, who knows? That I think that means that it's harder to narrate what he was trying to do. And I think the motives may be very mixed, with a combination of maybe, you know, this isolation and everything else. So I describe it as, you know, there's 2 types of political terrorism that you worry about. There's the Proud Boys, right? Organized with a mission. We know what their ideology is, conspiracies, January 6th. And then there's the lonely boys. And I'm not defending them for being lonely, but socially isolated, no community, access to guns, who sometimes go into schools, sometimes kill their ex-wives. And in this case, decided to show his strength through this move. So I'm hoping that the fact that the motive is not clear may minimize the copycats, but look, we're in this until November and probably after, and that's why it's incumbent on leadership and people like us who have platforms and stuff to actually take a breath and think about even words that we use.
Juliette, thanks for your time this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank
Juliette.
you. Bye, guys.